Picture this. It's 2025, and you're strolling down a busy street. Cars hum, neon signs flicker, and your phone buzzes with notifications. Then, in a heartbeat, everything changes. The cars vanish, replaced by horse-drawn carriages. Buildings morph into ancient stone structures. And people around you are dressed in powdered wigs and corsets, straight out of the 1700s. Or perhaps you blink and find yourself in a dazzling future, flying drones, holographic billboards, and skyscrapers that touch the clouds. These are time slips, moments when ordinary people claim they've been yanked out of their own era and dropped into the past or future, with no warning and no explanation. Are these glitches in the fabric of reality? Vivid hallucinations? Or evidence of a phenomenon science can't yet grasp? Today, we're diving deep into real accounts of time slips, stories so compelling they'll make you question the nature of time itself. Let's explore what these experiences might mean, and whether they hold the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. Our journey begins in August 1901, in the opulent gardens of Versailles, France. Charlotte Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, two English school teachers, were wandering the palace grounds, searching for the Petit Trianon, a small chateau associated with Marie Antoinette. As they walked, something strange happened. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, and the modern tourists around them seemed to vanish. The landscape shifted subtly. Paths looked different. The atmosphere felt dreamlike. Suddenly, they encountered people dressed in 18th century clothing. Women in lavish gowns, men in powdered wigs. A man with a pockmarked face approached them, warning them not to take a certain path in a language that felt oddly formal. They even saw a woman sketching in a garden, who they later believed resembled Marie Antoinette herself, the tragic queen executed during the French Revolution. When Moberly and Jourdain returned to England, they were haunted by the experience. They wrote down their accounts separately, without discussing them, to ensure accuracy. Astonishingly, their stories aligned almost perfectly. Same figures, same buildings, same eerie sensation. They described details about the gardens, clothing, and even a bridge that matched historical records of the 1780s, a period they hadn't studied in depth. Skeptics argue they simply got lost, their imaginations fueled by the romantic history of Versailles. Perhaps they wandered into a historical reenactment, or succumbed to a shared delusion. But believers point out that the specifics, like the pockmarked man and the bridge, which no longer existed in 1901, were too precise to be coincidence. The fact that two educated women, not prone to flights of fancy, experienced the same phenomenon makes this case one of the most famous time slip accounts. Could they have slipped into a pocket of the past, or was their minds playing tricks in a place steeped in history? Let's fast forward to 1996, in Liverpool, England, on Bold Street, a bustling shopping district filled with modern stores and cafes. A man named Frank was walking with his wife when the world around him transformed. The hum of traffic faded into an unnatural silence. The sleek shop fronts morphed into old-fashioned storefronts, their signs advertising businesses that hadn't existed for decades. People around him wore 1960s clothing, flared trousers, beehive hairdos, mod jackets. Frank stepped into what he thought was a modern bookstore, only to find it stocked with vintage paperbacks and vinyl records. Confused, he turned to call his wife, but she was gone. In an instant, the street snapped back to 1996. Modern shops, modern clothes, and his wife standing there, puzzled by his shaken expression. Frank's experience is far from unique. Bold Street is a notorious hotspot for time slip reports, with over 50 documented cases. One woman claimed she saw an old-fashioned bus trundling down the street, blasting 1950s rock and roll, only for it to vanish. Another man entered a clothing store, browsed 1960s-style dresses, and stepped outside to find the shop was now a bank. These stories share striking similarities: a sudden quiet, a dreamlike haze, and an abrupt return to the present. Skeptics suggest these could be vivid daydreams, perhaps triggered by the historic charm of Liverpool, a city with a rich cultural past. Others argue the sheer volume of reports points to something more. Some locals believe Bold Street sits on a kind of temporal fault line, a place where time occasionally frays. Could this street be a vortex where past and present collide? Or are people simply caught in the nostalgia of a vibrant city? Not all time slips pull you into the past. Some catapult you forward. In 1935, British RAF pilot Victor Goddard was flying a biplane over an abandoned airfield in Drem, Scotland. As he passed overhead, the sky darkened, and a strange storm swirled below. Peering down, Goddard saw the airfield transformed. It was bustling with mechanics, modern aircraft, and workers in blue overalls. A stark contrast to the dilapidated, empty field he knew. The planes were painted yellow, a detail that stood out vividly. Shaken, Goddard flew on, and the vision dissolved as the storm cleared. 4 years later, in 1939, the airfield was reactivated, and it matched his vision exactly. Yellow planes, blue uniforms, a hive of activity. Goddard's case is one of the rare documented future time slips. He had no reason to expect the airfield's revival, let alone its specific appearance. Was he glimpsing a future timeline? Or was this precognition, his mind somehow projecting events yet to come? This account challenges the notion of time as a linear progression. Perhaps time is more like a web, with moments overlapping in ways we can't comprehend. Future time slips are less common than backward ones, but they raise profound questions. If Goddard saw the future, could others have seen further ahead, centuries, even millennia? And what does that mean for our understanding of reality? The Versailles and Bold Street cases are famous, but time slips have been reported for centuries, often in unexpected places. In 1979, an English couple, Jeff and Pauline Simpson, were driving through rural France on vacation. They stopped at a quaint, old-fashioned inn for the night. The staff wore outdated clothing, and the rooms lacked modern amenities. No phones, no electric lights, just candles. The bill was shockingly cheap, paid in old French francs. The next morning, they continued their trip, but couldn't find the inn when they tried to return. Locals insisted no such place existed. Later, the Simpsons realized the inn's decor and the francs matched the early 1900s, a time they couldn't have experienced. Another chilling case comes from 1957 in Kersey, England. 3 teenage cadets were on a training exercise when they approached a quiet village. The streets were eerily silent, no cars, no people, just the sound of distant church bells. The houses looked medieval, with thatched roofs and no chimneys. They knocked on doors, but no one answered. As they left, the village seemed to wake up, with modern sounds and sights returning. Historical research later suggested Kersey's layout in 1957 matched the 14th century, down to the church bells. Were these boys caught in a medieval time slip, or did their imaginations run wild in a sleepy village? What could cause a time slip? Let's unpack the leading theories. First, there's the physics angle. Some scientists speculate that time slips might be linked to quantum mechanics or wormholes, microscopic tunnels in space-time that connect different points in time. If a person stumbled into one, they could briefly experience another era. The problem is, wormholes are purely theoretical, and creating one would require energy far beyond our current capabilities. Yet quantum physics tells us time isn't as rigid as we assume. Particles can exist in multiple states at once. Maybe moments in time can overlap under rare conditions. Next, the psychological explanation. Time slips could be hallucinations triggered by stress, exhaustion, or the emotional weight of a historic place. The Versailles teachers were in a grand palace, steeped in stories of Marie Antoinette, which might have primed their minds for a shared delusion. But this theory struggles with cases like Goddard's, where specific details, yellow planes, blue overalls, matched future events the person couldn't have predicted. There's also the concept of collective memory, where places like Bold Street retain emotional imprints from the past, which sensitive individuals perceive as vivid scenes. The paranormal perspective offers another view. Some believe time slips are glitches in reality, like a video game lagging or a film reel skipping. Others suggest they're tied to spiritual energy, ghosts or residual energies replaying moments from their time. While there's no scientific evidence for this, the idea resonates with those who feel time slips have a supernatural quality. Finally, there's the multidimensional theory. What if time slips are glimpses into parallel universes? Quantum physics proposes multiple realities coexisting, each with its own timeline. A time slip might occur when these realities briefly intersect, allowing a person to see or step into another version of the world. Each theory has its strengths and flaws, but none fully explain the phenomenon. Time slips seem to straddle the line between science, psychology, and the unknown, challenging our assumptions about reality. Time slips aren't relics of the past. They're happening now, and people are sharing them online. On platforms like Reddit and X, users post chilling accounts that echo historical cases. In 2023, a driver in Texas reported speeding down a modern highway when the road turned to cobblestone. Horse-drawn carriages clattered past, and the air smelled of wood smoke. Seconds later, the highway reappeared, and the carriages were gone. Another user described walking into a 1950s-style diner in Chicago, complete with jukeboxes and waitresses in poodle skirts. When they blinked, it was a modern Starbucks, with no trace of the diner. In March 2025, an ex-user shared a vivid experience. While walking through a park in London, they heard 1940s big band music drifting through the air. The park transformed, filled with couples in vintage clothes dancing under string lights, like a scene from a wartime romance. Moments later, it was 2025 again, the music gone, the park empty. Another post described a glimpse of a futuristic city while driving in rural Australia, glass towers, drones, and glowing signs, before the landscape reverted to dusty plains. These modern accounts often describe a sudden shift in atmosphere, a dreamlike quality, and a quick return to normal, mirroring older stories. What's striking is the global spread of these reports. Time slips aren't confined to historic European cities. They're reported in the US, Australia, Asia, and beyond. Are people tapping into residual energy from the past or future? Or is the internet amplifying urban legends, encouraging embellished stories? The consistency of details, silence, haze, sudden shifts suggests there's more to explore. To make sense of time slips, we need to understand time itself. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity revolutionized our view, showing that time isn't fixed. It can stretch or compress depending on gravity and speed. Near a black hole, a minute could equate to years elsewhere. On Earth, time feels constant, but could rare conditions, magnetic anomalies, emotional intensity, or even geological fault lines create micro-distortions in time? Some fringe researchers propose this, though mainstream science demands more evidence. Quantum physics adds another layer. It suggests reality is probabilistic, with particles existing in multiple states simultaneously. Could moments in time behave similarly, overlapping under specific circumstances? The concept of parallel universes, supported by some interpretations of quantum mechanics, posits countless timelines coexisting. A time slip might be a momentary crossover, where one reality bleeds into another. This idea aligns with reports of time slips feeling unreal, like stepping into a different version of the world. Skeptics take a hard line on time slips, arguing there's no physical evidence, no photographs, no artifacts, just anecdotal stories. They point to psychological phenomena like pareidolia, where the brain imposes patterns on vague stimuli. A foggy day in Versailles could trick the mind into conjuring 18th century figures. Confabulation, where people fill memory gaps with false details, might explain why stories seem vivid but lack proof. Shared delusions, fueled by suggestion, could account for cases like Moberly and Jourdain's, where two people reinforce each other's perceptions. Skeptics also note that time slips often occur in historic or emotionally charged places. Versailles, Bold Street, old villages. Why not in mundane suburbs or office parks? These locations might prime the brain to expect something extraordinary, triggering vivid imaginings. For future slips like Goddard's, skeptics suggest lucky guesses or retrofitted memories, where vague impressions are later shaped to match real events. The lack of verifiable evidence is a major hurdle. No one has returned from a time slip with a tangible object from another era. Yet the sheer volume of accounts, spanning centuries and continents, poses a challenge. From 1901 Versailles to 2025 X-Posts, the stories share consistent traits: sudden onset, dreamlike quality, rapid return. Even if 99% are psychological, what about the 1% that defy explanation? Skeptics demand hard proof, but the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Time slips remain an enigma, teetering between the plausible and the impossible. Time slips force us to confront profound questions about reality. If they're real, they suggest time isn't a straight line but a complex, perhaps cyclical, structure. Ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Mayans, viewed time as a loop, with events repeating in cosmic patterns. Modern physics echoes this, with theories of curved spacetime and multiple dimensions. Time slips might be glimpses of these loops, moments where past, present, and future intertwine. Time slips also touch on human consciousness. Many experiencers describe a heightened awareness during the event, as if the veil of reality thins. Could our minds, under certain conditions, access other timelines? Neuroscience shows the brain can distort time perception. Think of time slowing down in a crisis. Maybe time slips are an extreme version, where consciousness briefly tunes into another era. This idea bridges science and spirituality, suggesting the human mind might be a key to unlocking time's secrets. Time slips are a mystery that refuses to be solved. From the gardens of Versailles to the streets of Liverpool, from a pilot's glimpse of the future to modern accounts shared online, these stories challenge everything we know about time. Are they glitches in space-time, products of the mind, or echoes of a science we've lost? They remind us that the universe is vast, strange, and full of secrets. Whether you see time slips as fact or fiction, they invite us to wonder, what else lies beyond our understanding? The next time you feel a strange shift in the air, pay attention. You might just be slipping through time.